Hello, friends. Chris Corsi here, president of Thrive Today, and I want to welcome you to the Relational Skills in Real Life podcast. Friends, I'm glad you're here. Today's topic is on the unexpected grief that can accompany earned maturity. That's right. There can be grief that comes up as we learn about maturity, as we grow maturity, and even try to spread some maturity skills in our families and our communities. So today we're going to talk about this unanticipated sorrow that can accompany the process of growing and developing earned maturity. So let's tease this out a little bit, friends. Earned maturity means that we're becoming more complex. We're becoming a new creation of sorts for this age and stage of life that we're in. And so growing maturity means that we're accomplishing and finishing needs and tasks that are needed for each age and stage of life. And so when those needs and tasks aren't met, what happens is we get stunted because my body continues to grow, but I might not emotionally be keeping up with my body. So I can be in a 50-year-old body, but still be at infant level maturity. So we have gaps and deficits that we want to fill. And the good news is, as we fill those gaps and deficits, we become a better version of ourselves. With more maturity becomes more opportunities to better reflect the living God and to reach our full God-given potential. So let's talk a little bit about some of this unanticipated sorrow that might come up as we learn about maturity. So first thing is when we realize what we're missing, we realize some of the gaps that we have and the deficits we have in our maturity, we might have some feelings about that. I know I had some feelings about it when I first assessed my maturity. I said, how can I be stuck at infant maturity when I'm an adult? I come from a loving family. I've had a good education. I've had a great church. How can I get a bad grade on my report card like this? Well, I was misunderstanding maturity at that we're ultimately here. But I felt some sorrow. I felt some sadness because I didn't have the maturity that I could have had for the stage of life that I was in. So it's like us to be sad and even to grieve when we realize some of what we're missing. And for parents, every loving parent probably has some feelings about not being able to pass on the good stuff in some ways to our children. So as I assess and identify my maturity gaps, I realize, oh, I did not pass this on to my kids. And we can have some grief around that because we want to give the good stuff to our children. And sometimes when maturity is missing, we grieve what was not there, or we grieve because we passed on coping mechanisms to learn to deal with our deficits. So I passed on things that weren't really helpful for my kids. So if I avoid quieting, I can download this avoidance of quieting by trying to stay busy or do whatever it is that I do to avoid quieting. So we might have some grief around realizing, oh, wow, I didn't pass on some of these things to my children, and I really wish I would have. So there's also some grief when we realize there's a profound shortage of earned maturity in our communities. So we start realizing, wow, there are not as many mature leaders or mature people out there. And now that I understand what maturity is, so we might grieve about that. I often hear from people who discover maturity and they go, where are all the mature elders? I don't know. I can't find any. And so we might have some feelings about that as we realize what's missing in our world. And then there's another issue that might be surprising for some of us. We might even have some attachment pain or loss around. We feel lonely as we've worked on our maturity. We're not playing the same old games that we used to in our life and relationships. As we grow maturity, we're becoming more complex, more satisfied. We're becoming more peaceful, more joyful, less reactive. And that might put pressure on our relationships because, friends or family members might want us to play the old games, and we don't play the old games anymore. And that could create some tension, and it can make us feel a little bit lonely as well. So these reactions can often catch people off guard because they don't realize there's a lot of changes that can happen in and around me as I work on my maturity. I'm no longer doing things out of fear or guilt or entitlement. I've become a new creation of sorts, and it changes me, and that can create ripples in our lives and our relationships. So it's really helpful to know that maturity is a God's gift to help us better reflect the living God and reach our God-given potential. But for some of you, maturity might be a new concept. So I just want to encourage you to listen to podcast episode 41 for an overview on maturity to learn a little more. And we'll talk about some more resources here in just a little bit. But learning to fill in gaps and deficits in our maturity helps us be more alive, more fully mature than we were before. And it's normal to feel some sadness about realizing we have some gaps. It's actually understandable because we are people who grieve loss and have feelings about loss in some way, shape, or form. But maturity is not about value or self-worth. We're simply understanding where the ice is thin and where the ice is thick in our character and our identity. And we kind of want to know where the ice is thin so that we don't fall through and plunge into the icy cold waters of immaturity and reactivity. We may even feel a little guilt about the process when we realize, wow, I passed on some things I didn't want to pass on, or I didn't pass on what I should have. So I'm going to talk about how to navigate some of this terrain. The good news is growing maturity and learning relational skills is like developing gold. You really can't put a price tag on these things because it's life changing. It changes who we are from the inside out. And as we mature, we want to share this joy with the world. We want to testify what God is doing in us, through us, what we're learning, how we're growing. We want everybody to know the things that have helped us because it might also help them. So it's understandable that when we grow maturity, it does change us in some ways. And we become newer, better versions of who we are, and that we are better able to live from the heart that Jesus gave us. Now, there's a transformation that happens with each and every stage of maturity, where there's that dying of an old stage of life, dying of an old creation, and I'm now becoming a new creation that does things out of joy and peace instead of fear and reactivity. But those transformations, this rebirth of sorts, can be intimidating or frightening because it's like your brain looks back to predict the future. So your brain says, okay, I'm going somewhere new here on new terrain. I've never been here before. I don't know what to expect. So I can remember as I started to learn maturity, grow maturity, and go into the more advanced stages of maturity, it was just a little scary because I didn't know what to expect. And I was afraid of like, am I going to lose my friendships? Am I going to like have different interests, different hobbies? Like I just didn't know what to expect. And that's understandable because it is a bit of a transformation, especially as we start to do things out of secure love instead of fear and reactivity and avoidance, pain avoidance. So maturity means that we are not only becoming more complex, but we're finishing these life tasks and needs with each stage of maturity, which gives us additional capacity to reflect the people that God created us to be. We can now carry more weight than we could before. And so I know Dr. Wilder likens maturity to like ripe fruit on the tree branch. This fruit is ripe, it's ready for picking. So we are mature, we are ripe for the age and stage of life that we're in. We can now give out of the abundance of what we have rather than trying to give out of fear of what we don't have. And so the life model has really given us a wonderful template map, roadmap to look at maturity and understand where we are and what we need next. But it might be a little surprising that some of these fears or some loss might accompany our journey because we realize, wow, I'm missing some things I didn't realize I was missing. Um, and I have some feelings about that. I'm realizing we don't have a lot of mature minds. I'm having a hard time connecting with people because our interests are different. I don't like to go out and party and do the old things I used to do. I'm looking for meaningful, life-giving relationships where I'm no longer having to try to fill those voids in myself. So we may discover that those interests change. Our goals and our hopes might be adjusted in some ways. We're now living from the heart that Jesus gave us. So fear no longer runs the show of our decisions, our lives, our relationships. We have more peace and more joy, and we're better at caring for ourselves as well as other people in our life. We know what satisfies. We no longer have to pursue external means of trying to find purpose and meaning. And so this is good news that we can have hope in the midst of our journey here because more maturity means we just simply have more life to give, more joy and more peace to go around. And we have clarity on who we are and who we're not. We have more opportunities to spread joy in our lives. because we're working out of the joy and the capacity that we have rather than what we're missing. So maturing is a beautiful process. It's good. It's lovely. We can embrace it. And it might sting when we realize what we're missing. The good news is that we're discovering places where we can grow and those filling those pockets so that we are better able to navigate pressure and strain and be the people that God created us to be. So I can remember in my own life when I first started learning and understanding maturity and working on some of my missing maturity gaps, it really changed me in some really profound ways. And I didn't quite know how to relate with some of my friends. Or I didn't want to do the same old things that I used to do that were often self-destructive. I wanted to live with purpose. I wanted to live in my calling and be the person that God created me to be. So I started to learn to live from my heart and live according to my values in wonderful ways, which was very satisfying. I no longer felt this restlessness within me to try to fill that void. I no longer needed those vain substitutes to try to prove my self-worth. That, wow, I know what's satisfying, and I no longer have to try to fill those gaps in my life. And then I did notice that I had some loss as well as I adjusted to these things and I felt alone sometimes. But I also started to embrace that and rather than avoid and say, it's like me to feel these feelings and share these feelings and quiet these feelings because I want to be the person God designed me to be. And I wanted to live from the heart that Jesus had given me. So I learned to be honest and transparent with God as well as with like-minded friends who valued community. I found a lot of hope and encouragement by connecting with people who were open to talking about maturity, as well as colleagues and other people in Life Model Thrive Today circles who really were also very interested in this journey. And I even started some book studies with people to learn more about maturity and unpack some of these things. And I looked for Jesus to comfort and affirm me that this was his good work and he can relate to maybe feeling alone sometimes when people aren't able to really enter into your world. And so I found peace from God anytime I was missing my peace, knowing that God sees me, God hears me, and God understands me. So I grieved the losses and I celebrated the victories. And I used this journey to really share with others what I was learning and how I was growing and the good work that God was doing in me. So I found that growing maturity did not have to isolate me from other people. I could actually use this as an opportunity to share stories and testify what God's teaching me. And so we can learn to embrace our newfound growth and maturity, not hide it under a basket. We learn to be the people God designed us to be. And growing maturity, frankly, it frees us up to be the people that God created us to be. So we suffer well, we stay relational, and we show others an understanding, an example of the God that we serve, this God who is loving and kind and forgiving and merciful. And so we are a people that grieve losses and some of the changes as we grow our maturity, but we're able to use these times as opportunities to spread the good stuff and invite others into the journey with us, whether it's through a book study or praying together or just having some conversations. So, friends, I hope this gives you some encouragement. This is a big deal. We can grow and we can develop maturity. And if you'd like to learn a little more about this maturity process, not only is there podcast episode 41, but we have 48 and 66 as well if you want to go a little deeper. And our Thrive trainings, our in-person Thrive trainings, we spend a lot of time, particularly in track one, helping people to identify their maturity and their next steps and so forth. And Dr. Jim Wilder has a wonderful growing series that unpacks the stages of maturity. He has a trilogy of books. You can find it on Amazon. And look up Dr. Wilder's Growing series to learn more about maturity and learn more about our resources at thrivetoday.org. And friends, it's my prayer that this is the start of something good for you today.